Coming up on Bridge City News. Open for business. Today marks Phase 2 of Alberta's relaunch strategy. Plus, Lethbridge Police launch an online bike registry. And one Lethbridge High School finds a creative way to celebrate their grads.
Your nation. Your province. Your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Hello and thank you for joining us. Today marked Phase 2 of Alberta's relaunch strategy, and as the province eased some of the COVID-19 restrictions, it acknowledged that it might take a while for life to be totally normal again. Restaurants are operating at half-capacity limits along with bars, lounges, and cafes, and the requirement for 2 meters between tables remains. Instrumental concerts can also resume, but not ones with singing because of the risk of respiratory droplets spreading the virus. City recreation facilities like fitness centers and pools in Calgary and Edmonton aren't reopening right away either. But here in Lethbridge, many gyms are allowing customers back inside today. The Lethbridge Fitness Club had their grand reopening today, and the general manager of the gym, Becky Hughes, says that they're excited to be back and that everyone was gearing up to reopen once they heard the announcement that Phase 2 was going through on June 12th.
Honestly, we're so excited to have our members back. Like, we're a family here, so not seeing them for 3 months has been super hard on our team, and it's hard for them too. So to have everybody back, to have everybody healthy and like using our gym again, we're super excited. It's definitely something we were waiting for. It was definitely short notice. We did everything it was all hands on deck kind of situation, but we did everything we could to make it so we're ready, and we're happy we are ready and that everybody's able to come back and we're able to see our smiling faces again. It's nice to be a local business in this community.
And for the first time in over 3 months, the Movie Mill reopened. The Mill is the only theater in the province to open its doors. There will be certain restrictions.
We've done as much research as we can. We've got our plexi up, we've got our sanitizing stations, we've blocked off some seats. We're trying to do our best. We're listening to our customers. We only have about 40% seating capacity in the theaters, so there's plenty of room to social distance in the theaters as well. Different cleaning protocols. We've spaced out our show times so there shouldn't be as big of a lineup, and gives us more time for cleaning as well. We've been a part of this community for almost 26 years, so our patrons are our family, and we miss them, and we've received so many emails and texts and social media posts, just so much support. We're just thrilled.
Escape rooms in Lethbridge have been temporarily closed because of the novel coronavirus. And today, Escape from LA, the Great Escape Lethbridge, are reopening their doors. Melody Champagne is the manager for Escape from LA, and she says that there are new guidelines for patrons when they come inside.
We are closely following all the guidelines laid out by health authorities. So what that includes for us is allowing more reset time in between each game so that we can thoroughly clean all the surfaces, all the touch points and everything. We are also practicing, obviously, physical distancing in all the common areas. Groups are only playing with the people that they bring. They're not being put into our games with strangers at all. We are ensuring that groups don't cross paths in our lobby, so we are, only setting things up scheduling-wise so that we accommodate one group in our common areas at a time.
Champagne says that Escape from LA wasn't sure when Phase 2 was going to start before the announcement, but they managed to pull it off to get the store ready in time for today. And in addition to these businesses, libraries will also be opening with some restrictions. Also, places of worship, wellness services like massage, acupuncture, reflexology, personal services like manicures and pedicures, casinos and bingo halls, and some team-based sports. For a full look at the list of amenities open to the public, you can visit our website at bridgecitynews.ca. A member of the Spring Valley Hutterite colony in southern Alberta says 2 teens who died after boating on a river were from the community. A third teen from the community is missing. George Waldner says everyone in the colony is in shock. A group of about 10 teens were on the St. Mary River on Wednesday, drifting in a small aluminum boat when one of the craft capsized. The bodies of 2 of the girls have been found, and efforts continue to find the remaining teen. Our local food banks are reminding us that Target Hunger is taking place tomorrow morning. Please have your donations of non-perishable food items out on your doorstep by 10 a.m. for volunteers to come and pick up. Simply write the letters TH for Target Hunger on the bag. The campaign is a citywide food drive that will help to restock the shelves at both the Interfaith and Lethbridge food banks. If you've ever biked in the city, there's a chance your bicycle has been stolen. Last year alone, police recovered more than 900 bikes and over 600 were reported stolen. BCN's Ainsley O'Reilly explains what one frustrated teen did to help this problem.
Grade 9 student Nathan Sherwood had his bike stolen over and over again.
It was 3 different bikes that had been stolen 4 times.
So he talked to the mayor and in September presented an idea to the police commission. Sherwood suggested an online program called Bike Index that allows you to register and track your bicycle.
They've been doing this in Calgary and Edmonton, and it's been pretty helpful. So it's nice to know that some bikes are going to be recovered and given back to some people.
Rather than do nothing, he chose to react, and he reacted in what I think is a very proper and responsible way.
To say that I was impressed by this young man's presentation, very articulate, well-spoken young gentleman.
Each registered bicycle gets a sticker connecting officers to all of the supporting details needed to recover your bike.
For an officer, we can literally go up with our phones. We're lucky here in Lethbridge that we're all on Smart Squad on our phones. So we just literally take our phone, scan it down. We can scan the QR code. This is literally how I'm doing it right now this quickly. Hit one button and all the information is up here on the phone itself already. It takes literally 20 seconds to do it for us on the streets.
LPS officers will be handing out stickers on Saturday, June 13th from 10 a.m. till 3 p.m. at the police station. Additional sticker and registration days will be announced.
Well done, and there you go. It's my pleasure to give that to you.
For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
Graduation ceremonies have been shut down due to COVID-19, and students haven't been able to walk the aisle to receive their diplomas. As Micah Quinn explains, students from Emmanuel Christian Secondary School are being presented with graduation lawn signs by their teachers to show their gratitude and let them know that they're not forgotten.
The teachers at Emmanuel Christian Secondary School rolled in to congratulate their student, Hope Johnson, and show support for her graduation. Since students at the school aren't able to have a real graduation, the teachers handed out a graduation lawn sign for all of them this week. Hope Johnson received her sign today.
I mean, honestly, when I heard, I was so impacted. I was like, oh, this is the most meaningful thing ever. Especially considering other schools have much bigger grad classes and they won't be able to do things like this. And I was just like, oh, so sweet, the effort that the teachers put in. I was so touched.
One of Johnson's teachers, Jamie Ancia, says the teachers wanted students to feel special and honored for their accomplishments.
We thought this was a good way to see all of them because we haven't seen them since March, and also for them to see us and to still kind of cause a whole commotion in their neighborhood for a couple minutes.
For Johnson, it was a surprise when her teachers showed up to see her.
We just got an email and then it was hey, we're going to be doing something a little different. It was very down low, but it was very good.
Ancia hopes the students know how much they care about them and how proud they are of what they've done. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
For many who can't keep their social distance, masks have been coming in handy. However, masks might pose a challenge for someone who needs to read lips in order to communicate. A San Diego woman has created face masks with a clear window over the mouth to help lip readers communicate with others during the pandemic.
And the issue for me is I can hear sounds, but I can't understand them. It's called sound discrimination. And so what I do is I read lips. I grew up reading lips my whole life. And without seeing people's facial expressions or reading lips, I can't understand what they're saying.
I'm calling them the transparent lip of reading masks. And then I'm calling my company Happy Laugh Masks because it I want to show that you can see smiles, you can see expressions.
The government-backed Canada Mortgage and Housing Corp is tightening rules for mortgage insurance starting July 1st. Mortgage broker Corey McLean tells us why the move would make it harder for riskier borrowers.
CMHC, the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, has come out with some policies to try to probably protect the consumer and protect the taxpayer, and that's by reducing the limit of debt service ratios. So the effect that it's had is for people purchasing homes, it's going to just have a reduction on that price point and the amount of mortgage that they qualify for. The net effect for everybody is we're going to see somewhere around a 10% reduction on their purchase price qualification. So between 9 and 10% depending on how all those numbers shake out. So somebody that was previously qualified for 200 is now looking at 180, and somebody that was 300 is now looking at 270-ish. The COVID situation has had an impact as the government tries to come through this and knows that we're a highly indebted society, including the government, and there are probably measures that they're trying to ease back the overall personal debt load as we see people's debt load continue to climb, and certainly in particular pockets and bigger centers. I think that this is a measure that's trying to reduce that price point and therefore carry less mortgages.
The Alberta government is shutting down the provincial agency that promotes green initiatives. Energy Efficiency Alberta is funded rebates for everything from solar panels to energy efficient appliances and windows when it was launched by the former NDP government in 2017. But those incentives were cancelled by Premier Jason Kenney's government last fall. The Associate Minister in charge of red tape says what remains of the agency's mandate can be done by other panels or by other departments. RCMP dashcam video of an officer tackling a Northern Alberta First Nation chief and punching him in the head is part of a court application to get criminal charges against Chief Alan Adams stayed. The 12-minute video shows an already tense situation deteriorating on March 10th after an officer approached Adams' truck outside a casino in Fort McMurray for having expired plates. Wood Buffalo RCMP issued a statement that supervisors reviewed the video and determined the officer's actions were reasonable. Meantime, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says that it's evident that institutions across the country, including RCMP, display systemic discrimination against Indigenous people and many others.
I think everyone who's seen this video has serious questions about what exactly happened, about how it happened this way, and about that use of force that we saw. That's why we're calling for an independent, transparent investigation that will get the answers that so many questions people are asking right now. There is important answers to have on these specific things, but also on the pattern that we are seeing of why so many Indigenous Canadians or racialized Canadians are afraid when they are interacting with the police. These are things that we need to address, and we're working on it together.
And south of the border, racial tensions continue to escalate between African Americans and law enforcement agencies. Before his death in police custody in Minneapolis 2 weeks ago, George Floyd was accused of using a fake $20 bill to buy cigarettes from a grocery store, prompting residents and activists to ask, what is a black life worth?
If you want to really hear a story, one day I went into the holidays to get a $100 bill to get gas for my truck for $20, and they gave me change, and one of the bills was a counterfeit bill. I didn't even know it was. The ma'am said, "Mister, this is a counterfeit bill." And I'm like, "No, it's not." And we went back and forth. The manager came out, "Yes, it is. Get out of the store. I'm gonna call the police." Now, had me not being from the South, knowing when I hear that word, get the hell out of Dodge, or being on the streets, when I hear that word, I'm outie, because I'm not comfortable around you anyways, and I left. But what if I would have stayed? What if I would have stayed and been victimized?
Y'all know it was murder. Y'all know that was wrong.
You mean to tell me $20 is worth somebody's life? $20? I've lost more than that walking down the street and then cry about it. But $20? What do you hate us for? What did we do? Just tell us. Will they apologize for some of the stuff that they did to black folks? Even for our ancestors. What is so secret about us that you hate us? I always wanted to know that, even when I was a kid. I used to ask my mom, why do they hate us?
The pause of both international and domestic mission trips has potential to disrupt ministry. In light of canceled mission trips, ministries are developing creative solutions to mitigate the effects of lost labors of love. BCN's Loris Alexander spoke with Darren McCree, a missionary in Colombia, who, despite the challenges of COVID-19 appears hopeful rather than panicked.
Well, in the last 3 months this year, pretty much, our world has just turned upside down. I think there's not a single place on the face of the earth that hasn't been hit by COVID-19. What has missions looked like for you right now with COVID-19? Have you seen this as an opportunity to minister, or has it been a setback?
Now, the setback is because we do a lot of outreach teams. As a matter of fact, we've had a lot of outreach teams coming in from Alberta for the last few years. But all of those have canceled, obviously, because of health concerns on both sides of the border. And so we've had to take a look at what we're doing. But in Colombia, the virus, the crisis in general, has caused the government to totally quarantine the country. And that means only being able to go out to buy groceries and only one person per family per week, a lot of different restrictions. So suddenly in a country that has no social safety net, then we found ourselves being the one source that a lot of people have just to eat. Right now, it is very easy to live in fear for all of us. And the Bible is very clear that ours is not the spirit of fear. And so if I wanted to leave one thing, it would be to encourage viewers that when we most fear is maybe when we most need to reach out, when most God can use us, and when most God can do spectacular things. We firmly, truly believe that God will continue to do great things through us and in us, and even in our family. Our oldest son is just heading off to university. We're just in Ontario at the moment because he's going to be studying aviation at the University of Waterloo. Believe that God is faithful and he will carry us through in the same way that he will carry all through who trust in him.
Anyone flying into, out of, or around the country will soon need to have their temperature checked before they can board a plane. The rule will be phased in, starting with people arriving in Canada. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the measure is meant to keep COVID-19 from spreading as people start traveling by air again. Well, it is so exciting to be promoting movies again at the Mill, and we have for you, once again, the long-awaited Movie Mill Minute.
Powered with incredible speed, Sonic embraces his new home on Earth until he accidentally knocks out the power grid, sparking the attention of evil genius Dr. Robotnik. Now, it's supervillain versus Supersonic in an all-out race across the globe to stop Robotnik from using Sonic's unique power to achieve world domination.
Good morning, my rural chum.
Mr. Dr. Robotnik, I'm going to give you 5 seconds to tell me where it is.
Wait! Don't hurt him! Following the antics of a young woman, Emma Woodhouse, who lives in Georgian and Regency-era England and occupies herself with matchmaking in sometimes misguided and often meddlesome fashion in the lives of her friends and family.
Emma, they're here!
With whom will you dance?
Mother, you must sample the tart.
When Spencer goes back into the fantastical world of Jumanji, pals Martha, Fridge, and Bethany re-enter the game to bring him home. But the game is now broken and fighting back. Everything the friends know about Jumanji is about to change as they soon discover there's more obstacles and danger to overcome.
We had a beautiful warm day today here in Lethbridge, and we almost reached that 30-degree mark on the mercury, but clouds could be rolling in. I'll have a full look at the weather coming up right after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Here is a look at our weather for Lethbridge this evening. Partly cloudy skies. There will be a 30% chance of showers this evening with a risk of a thunderstorm. We could see a southeast wind at 20 km per hour, at times gusting to 40 km. Overnight low 13 degrees into tomorrow. We're going to be seeing 26 is the high, but there is going to be a chance of showers and a possibility of an afternoon thunderstorm as well for Saturday. Humid too. Humidex is 27 and the UV index is 9 or very high as we're getting closer to summer, definitely those UV indexes are getting higher, even with the chance of rain, which is interesting. Saturday night, overnight low of 10 degrees. We could see a chance of showers Saturday night as well. Sunday, cloudy, 16 degrees, 18 is the high for Monday with sunny skies, lots of sunshine on Tuesday as well, high 17. And Wednesday, increasing clouds. We could see that rain come back into the picture for Wednesday evening, as there is a 60% chance of showers that night. Into Thursday, high of 18 and a mix of sun and cloud. There you go. That was your 5-day. Now, the almanac tells us the average for this time of year is 22 degrees. Average low, 8 degrees. 33 degrees was the high temperature back in 1959, and the coldest temperature was 1. That was in 1999. The sun rose this morning at 5:24 a.m. and our Friday evening sunset 9:39 p.m. as we're getting closer and closer to the summer solstice, which is happening next weekend, I believe. So days are getting longer and longer as we get to that point. Victoria and Vancouver, Victoria could see 16 degrees. Chance of lots of winds in the Straits of Juan de Fuca there. Chance of showers in Vancouver, high of 16. 27 is the high for Edmonton. They could see some showers tomorrow. Calgary, mix of sun and cloud. Their showers might not come until Saturday evening. Saskatoon could see a chance of rain, 32 degrees, 31 in Regina with lots of sunshine, and warm and sunny in Winnipeg as well. 25 is their high. Now, Toronto will see a mix of sun and cloud. 18 degrees is the high. Same thing for Ottawa. Ottawa could see a chance of some drizzle, mix of sun and cloud in Montreal with a high of 19 degrees. And then, as we look further east into Atlantic Canada, Fredericton tomorrow, lots of sunshine, 22 is the high. Halifax high, 18 degrees. There's a chance of drizzle, some fog also retreating into the coast. Charlottetown's high, 19. A chance of showers there as well. Mix of sun and cloud in St. John's with a high of 22 degrees. There you go. That is your weather forecast. An important measure of household debt rose in the first quarter as the COVID-19 pandemic started shutting down the economy. Stats Canada reports household credit market debt as a proportion of household disposable income rose to 176.9% from 175.6%. That means that there was $1.77 in credit market debt for every $1 of household disposable income. A Canada Revenue Agency official says federal systems have already flagged a number of potential fraudulent applications for the $2,000 a month Canada Emergency Response Benefit. Ted Gallivan from the agency's assistant commissioner in charge of compliance says that includes people involved in criminal activity that have now targeted the pandemic aid program. Gallivan has told the Commons Finance Committee that harsh sanctions are being sought for fraudulent CERB claims. He says the measures being sought would target people who have filed hundreds of fraudulent claims, such as those who have reportedly gone into retirement homes to have seniors sign up for the benefit. Loblaws and Metro are ending a $2 an hour wage premium tomorrow that they had been paying frontline employees since mid-March. The two grocery chains hiked wages of workers who were deemed essential when restrictions to contain the spread of COVID-19 were first put in place. 2 in 1. Loblaw Executive Chairman Galen Weston says in a letter to customers that things have now stabilized at the company's supermarkets and drugstores. Loblaw is promising an additional $25 million in bonuses to workers, while full-time workers at Metro will get a $200 bonus and part-time employees will get $100.
The TSX was up 205 points today to 15,256. The Dow was up 477 points to 25,605. The S&P 500 was up 39 points to 3,041. The Nasdaq was up 96 points to 9,588. Oil was up 21 cents to $36.55 per barrel. Natural gas went down 7 cents to $1.74. Gold was up $3.05 to $16.98 an ounce. Silver was down 16 cents to $17.49 an ounce. Wheat is at $245 per metric ton. Barley is at $246. Canola is at $468. And corn is at $232 per metric ton. Live cattle were down 75 cents to 96.08. Feeder cattle were down $1.08 to 131.10. Lean hogs were up 8 cents to 48.05. And the Canadian dollar was up slightly on the day to 73.60 US.
Recapping one of our top stories this hour, Alberta is slowly beginning to reopen for business as phase 2 of the province's relaunch strategy took place today. This means that gyms, libraries, salons, churches, and movie theaters will open. And on a side note, Movie Mill was the only theater to open its doors in the province today. As many economies are slowly reopening across North America, National Post columnist John Robson says that it's paramount that we help our small businesses to survive during this pandemic. That is coming up right after this short break. Stay with us. Many health experts, politicians, and media outlets are saying that Canada is reopening the economy too quickly, that it's too risky to public health. But is it? Joining us today to discuss this is John Robson, a columnist with the National Post. Welcome, John. Thank you for joining us here on Bridge City News.
Thank you.
John, what are the experts so afraid of by Canada reopening its economy? Do they believe that we run the risk of seeing hospitals overrun and massive deaths across the nation?
It's not entirely clear. I think the problem we face here fundamentally is that we don't know what we're trying to do, so we're having trouble doing it. You said at the beginning they think we're opening too quickly, but the appropriate question is too quickly for what? If the goal is that nobody will ever get this illness again, yeah, we're opening too quickly. We'll have to stay closed forever and die of something else quite soon. If it's too quickly to prevent this massive wave that was going to overwhelm the hospitals, well, it already didn't materialize. So we shouldn't be worrying about that, because in order to clear the decks for this tsunami, they've postponed cardiac surgery, cancer surgery, all kinds of things that are going to cause people to die sooner than they otherwise would have. And the costs of doing so are mounting. Opening too quickly to get kids back to school and seeing their friends and getting back to learning in a more normal environment. All of these questions aren't being asked. The one thing seems to be we don't want anyone ever to get this disease. And if it were like the Black Death, there'd be some point to that. But we've seen by now that it's not. It is extremely dangerous to people who are old, very sick, or both. And they haven't been protected. So we're not opening too quickly for the people in seniors' homes. There's been a terrible toll there regardless. But for most people, it's not that dangerous. And the ongoing consequences of having, a quarter of the workforce unemployed, of businesses failing, of relationships collapsing, there are huge costs to this, which are being treated by people like everybody from Justin Trudeau to Doug Ford as though they just didn't exist. When Ford said he was closing the schools, he said, I will take no risks with the safety of your children. But he's taking significant risks with the safety of our children, just not with COVID-19. And that's the one thing. It's as though the only thing that matters in life is that you don't get COVID-19. Anything else is fine.
Now, John, you asked the question, is our goal to simply contain the virus, or is it to eradicate it? The approach to eradication is going to be very different, obviously, than containment, right?
Well, yeah, and again, we're treating it as though it was Ebola or something, that it must be absolutely eliminated, or terrible things will happen to our economy, our society, and all of us as individuals. But suppose somebody said, well, we're going to eradicate the flu. And we don't care what it costs. We don't care if we have to run a $300 billion federal deficit. We don't care if the federal government has to borrow more money than it takes in taxes. We don't care if we have to close the schools forever. We don't care what happens to anybody or anything. Your restaurant can fail. Your barbershop is gone. Never mind any of that stuff. There will never be another case of flu. People would say, well, you're insane, right? Even though flu does kill people. We know flu season does bring mortality with it, again, and particularly the old and the unwell, and to some extent the very young, which is not apparently the case with this SARS-CoV-2. But all of this is to think about the disease in the wrong way. We're imagining that how would you eradicate the common cold, right? If you set that as your goal, you destroy your economy, you destroy your society, and we'd still get colds. And that's the critical thing. We can't eradicate this. This is a worldwide virus that most people get it, they're asymptomatic. We have no idea how many cases there have actually been, probably a very large number, people who didn't even know they were sick or realized they were sick but weren't very sick. It's going to circulate. There's going to be a second wave and a third wave. It's going to be with us for years, but it's not going to be killing people. What's going to kill people is continuing the lockdown.
Yeah, now that's interesting that you bring up the second wave. So there is a lot of talk about trying to prevent that second wave of COVID-19, but realistically, is it actually possible to stop a second wave?
Well, no, I mean, it is. You could shoot everybody, but, really it's not because we're going to end the lockdown. It's out there in the community. People have it who don't even know they've got it, and they're going to give it to other people, many of whom won't know they have it. But it's like, again, with the flu. Suppose you got a flu season and you said, we're going to stop there being a second wave. You couldn't do it, and the cost of trying would be prohibitive. Sure, there's going to be a second wave. This is one of these things. Diseases arrive, they get loose, they become endemic. And they settle down, and we develop some kind of immunity to them, and they become less lethal because otherwise they kill off their host. For the most part, that's the common cold, right? There isn't just one common cold. There are colds. There isn't just one flu. Every year it's like, oh, it's a new flu. And then, we try and vaccinate. Sometimes we hit our target. Sometimes we miss. But for the most part, again, you get the flu and you go, oh, terrible. And then you get up and you go back to work or whatever you were doing. And the people who die of it were mostly people. I'm not trying to be callous here. We all hope to be there one day, but it's a fact. Most of the people who die of the flu were likely to die of something reasonably soon anyway. And we can't prevent it, and we don't try. And sure, the flu comes and goes in waves, and it comes and goes in mutations. Because one of the funny things is that the people who seem most keen on the lockdown are normally the people who are also like, evolution's great, evolution's everywhere, evolution explains everything. And then you say, you do realize that diseases evolve too, right? Even these miserable viruses aren't alive and they evolve. That's a dirty trick. But the virus is going to adapt, it's going to evolve. There are going to be new strains of the thing. It's everywhere. It's around the world. What do you think it's going to do? Just go away because we don't like it? So that's why I say we're trying to do the wrong thing. We're trying to make it go away instead of trying to balance the harm of medical consequences versus the harm of the restrictions and find the best balance we can between the two. And again, you're seeing now the federal government is getting close to insolvency. The provinces I don't like to think about. Businesses are failing. People are sinking into despair. Where's the federal government going to find these hundreds of billions of dollars it's spending? They're injecting liquidity into the economy from a tank in the Peace Tower. No, they got to borrow it from capital markets that are in a mess because people's savings are collapsing. There are all kinds of very harmful consequences from overreacting. And again, in the early stages, we didn't know. We thought it really might be highly contagious, highly lethal, and we should have shut down more firmly than we did, right? Remember the government saying, oh, you don't need to close the borders. That's silly. You don't need to wear a mask. That's silly. Who's this idiot? And again, it's not a partisan thing. Doug Ford said, go enjoy March break. Bill de Blasio in New York City, hey, get out to Chinatown. Don't stay in. Phooey to this virus. So we could have reacted sooner. But now that we've overreacted, it's time to not to repeat the mistake. Don't react too early and then end the quarantine too late and then end the quarantine too late. Recognize this is something we've got to live with, but we must get the economy going. We must get our lives going again. There's that line from the Croods, this isn't living, it's just not dying. But again, the consequences to people's lives, depression, alcoholism, suicide, there are real devastating consequences to destroying people's businesses, livelihoods, and hopes. You can't treat it as though it's all free. It's not.
Now let's talk about flattening the curve. So it would appear that the curve has been flattened in Canada, but our leaders are being very cautious. And if we were to see some increases in infections or deaths coinciding with the reopening, then would they deem the reopening as being the wrong decision? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think they would. They've got this kind of safety paranoia, right? We live in a world where we're all bubble wrapped mentally, that we think nothing bad should ever happen. So it's like, hey, there's a worldwide pandemic. Oh, well, you got to make sure nothing bad happens. So you can't. There's a worldwide pandemic. Those are bad, right, for obvious reasons. But imagine if we get a partial unlocking. And again, the schools in Ontario, they just shut them down. So that's not even an issue. And then you tell everybody, go back in. Nope, you just got your business restarted. You just thought maybe you're going to make it. Nope, you're not going to make it. Get back into your house. I don't think the populace would stand for it, and I don't think they should. This is crazy. Again, if you start to see half the population getting it and 1% of those dying, maybe you got to be a little more extreme, and that's what we thought was going to happen. And I think half of the population probably is going to get it, may already have. But the infection fatality rate is actually a lot lower than that. So yeah, you're going to see more cases, you're going to see a few more deaths. But again, you look at the statistics. What proportion of the deaths have been people who have been 80 or older, right? And I'm not saying that we should not be concerned about the elderly, but we haven't managed to protect them. But why would you lock down an entire economy when the risk to people who are under 60, who don't have a compromised immune system or certain other things, apparently diabetes is associated with vulnerability to it. There's a few other things. But why would you tell everybody who's not at risk of a really adverse outcome that they can't do anything for the next year and expect that the result wouldn't be justified unwillingness to comply? And again, another $300 billion deficit, how many years do you think you can do before something really awful happens? And I'm not asking Justin Trudeau because I don't think he understands where wealth comes from. But we need to understand it. People must be out creating wealth or there will not be wealth for politicians to hand out. It's that simple.
Yeah, and where's the money coming from too, right?
Well, yeah, they were just printing it. They took out the old Monopoly game.
Yeah. Well, I guess we could ask what rate of new cases and number of deaths is the Canadian public willing to accept? So I know it's not an apples to apples comparison with COVID-19 and the flu, as you mentioned influenza before, but every year, what is it, about 650,000 people are dying globally from influenza. So we don't go into monumental debt to try to wipe out the flu, right? What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, early on, I watched an interesting video from a guy in Germany who was pointing out the sort of alarming fact that 2,600 people a day die in Germany. Every day, predictably. I mean, more die in the winter than in the summer, but distributed over the year. And he said 2,200 of them are 65 or older. And so a lot of people are going to die every year, and they're going to die of the flu, or they're going to die of COVID-19, or they're going to die of pneumonia, or they're going to die of a heart attack. They're going to die of something. And if the result of this disease is that they die of this instead of something else, but the total number of excess deaths is trivial, then all of this was essentially for nothing. And that may actually turn out to be the case. We'll need to see the excess death figure overall. But then again, there are excess deaths from the lockdown, and you've got to subtract those from the figure. But yeah, if you know that, sorry, the numbers now escape me. I had actually done the calculation for Canada. But a certain number of Canadians die very predictably every year. A certain number of Ontarians die every year, and we're all going to die. It's sad but true, and you can't stop it. So the question is, are we facing a situation where a lot more people will die if we don't remain severely in lockdown? And if we're not, I mean, they give how many deaths are we willing to accept? Well, don't ask me, ask God, right? Because he said you're all going to die. And it's like, I don't accept that. And God's like, guess what? That makes no difference.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up that more people might die because of a lockdown, because there are medical professionals that are pointing out that while the lockdown may have prevented some deaths, it also may have caused other deaths through, canceled surgeries, suicides. Others are maybe dying from illnesses that they simply didn't get help for out of fear of contracting the illness, right? So what are we know that you're very passionate about this.
Canada's had a problem for years of these long waiting lists for healthcare, and these kill people. People die every day on waiting lists. They don't always die because they're on a waiting list. Some of them would have died anyway, but some do die because their treatment is delayed. And I'm very much hoping Brian Day is going to win his lawsuit, because we need to allow people to get medical health. It's outrageous that we tell people, you may think you're sick, but we don't care. You can't get treatment. But we're postponing these surgeries, so that problem is going to get worse. So there's specific medical reasons that more people will die, and then there's just the more general reason that man does not live by bread alone. People need hope. They need social contact. They need purpose in their lives. And that's what I mean about this isn't living, it's just not dying. Sitting in your house just not dying will kill you. And that is one of these paradoxes. But politicians don't think in terms of trade-offs. They think of saving us from everything, including purple dragons. And so they couldn't be more pleased with themselves, saying, no, you silly person, you're not going out. I remember, Justin Trudeau, don't go to the cottage over Easter. I'm going to the cottage over Easter. Or Doug Ford, don't go to your cottage. I'm going to my cottage. Oh, my daughter's visited. That's nice. Don't have your daughters visit. Right? So they're having a grand old time, handing out free money. Everybody loves them. The opposition is sidelined. But the fact that politicians are having fun is rarely a sign that something good is happening, and it certainly isn't here.
Mm-hmm. Now, John, you made an excellent point in your National Post article which is how well will we be prepared to deal with the next pandemic, especially if it's more serious, when we have basically destroyed our economy dealing with COVID-19? Where will the finances come from for that?
Yeah, because if you look at the conditions that gave rise to this pandemic, the globalized world with air travel, with big cities, with things moving around the planet like this is virus heaven, which is not good news. But you can't change it. We're not going to say, okay, no, we're going to ban the airplane. Someone will still fly. So there will be other pandemics, and we're going to see something almost certainly that is worse than this one, and especially in terms of the people it kills and how many. Look at the Spanish flu, right? That one killed healthy young people in large numbers. It seemed to prefer them to the old and the unwell, which is very odd. So when the next one comes and we can't lock down and we can't find more stimulus spending and we don't have protective equipment. So we need to get the economy going. We need to start stockpiling PPE and rotating the stockpiles like the idiots. We piled up a bunch of it with the first SARS, then we threw it all out. Like, that's government for you. They say businesses don't have long time horizons. Give me a break. But we need to be resilient. We need to understand how to operate and again, I think what we should have done on this one, quarantine the vulnerable. Don't quarantine the everybody. Nobody's ever done this before. Nobody's ever reacted to some disease by saying everybody go hide under the bed. And again, you look at at who's dying of it. 80% of the deaths apparently in this country, 80% are people in seniors' homes. So that's who was most vulnerable. And of the other 20%, a lot of them would have had a lot of the same kind of health problems that you typically find among residents of seniors' homes. So we have wildly overreacted. And that leaves us without resources. So we need to start rebuilding our resources. We need to get the economy back on its feet. We need to free up the medical system, let some air in there. We need to be sensible about stockpiling. We need to do all the things it will take to be ready for the next one, and not getting out of our houses and letting the economy die and governments go into insolvency is not the answer.
John, thank you so much for your thoughts and your opinions there. That is John Robson, a columnist with the National Post.
Abortion is a topic that stirs up passion on both sides of the debate. It seems, however, that the pro-life side of the conversation is not being welcomed in the public square. Joining me now in studio today is Ruth Shaw. She's the Executive Director of National Campus Life Network in Ottawa, and we're going to discuss this very hot-button topic of abortion. Ruth, welcome to BCN.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me about your organization, NCLN. What is it all about?
Yeah, so we're a youth organization, an anti-abortion organization that works to persuade young people to reject abortion. So young people in Canada are the ones having the most abortions, and so we believe if we want to see an end to that, we need to address the demographic having them. And so the way that we do that is by localizing onto university campuses, where we mentor, train, and mobilize campus pro-life clubs to bring the anti-abortion message to campus.
Now, you believe that Canada, Ruth, will one day be abortion-free? How is that possible in a country like ours?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen in a short amount of time. But if you look at other movements, especially on the left and in any other sphere, where you're able to catalyze people and speak to people and get them to adopt certain life-affirming values through repeated messaging, or through just constantly bringing the debate and exposing how bad something is, I do believe that at some point in our lifetime, we will see massive amounts of people reject abortion as more and more comes to light as to exactly how bad abortion actually is.
And you believe that young people are truly the catalysts for changing society and our mindset here in Canada? How so?
Well, I mean, to be clear, that can go either way, right? So, in our country right now, the vast majority of young people accept abortion as perfectly permissible. So if you ask the average person, as we do on university campuses, you ask them, what do you think about abortion? And they will say, oh, I'm pro-choice, just totally automatically. It's an automatic response. We've met so many young women who, when they find out they're pregnant, they automatically say, well, I'm going to have an abortion. So you can be a catalyst for change in that way too, by promoting abortion and accepting it and promoting it to your peer group. However, if you're able to convince young people to and show them the logic and the science that proves that abortion is abhorrent, I think that young people have proven to be the demographic for years and years and years that when they're catalyzed and convicted and mobilized, they will affect great change in our country. And so we're aimed at systematically speaking to young people on a university campus and mobilizing them and giving them opportunities to speak up, just as the pro-choice movement has done with young people, which is one of the reasons that we've seen abortion last for so long in our country.
Ruth, why do you think it is that so many universities are pro-choice and they don't even want the discussion? They're not willing to welcome pro-life voices onto campus? Why do you think that is?
Yeah, so, there's obviously probably money involved somewhere, but we're also dealing with a narrative and a history in our country of abortion being on demand for a very long time. So this is now the third generation that we're seeing who just accepts abortion as totally acceptable. So, you have young people graduating and then coming into positions of leadership. And if no one is affecting that generation in some kind of massive way, then all you're going to see is the continual perpetuation of the abortion rhetoric across our country. I mean, you see that greatly with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He graduated from a university campus, McGill. He did social justice work. He was an advocate for various things, and now he's in a position of leadership promoting certain things that are, destroying the fabric of our country, namely free speech.
Now, you had an interesting experience at Carleton University. Why don't you share with the viewers what happened?
Yeah, so, quite a long time ago, 10 years ago, I was running the pro-life club on my own campus, Carleton University. And, we were aimed at bringing the dialogue to campus no matter what. And so we wanted to put on a display that showed people exactly what abortion was. And the student union and our administration really didn't like us. We were sort of infamous on campus because we wouldn't let up in our messaging. And we applied to use this space on campus to put up the display, and the administration had a big problem with that, and so they denied us the ability to use space that everyone else on campus is allowed to use. And so we said to the university, this is discrimination. It's content-based discrimination. We're tuition-paying students, so we have a right to this property, and it's not for universities to decide who gets to talk about what. Universities are meant to be a place where we can explore ideas. And if we want to see Canada remain a democracy, then we have to vehemently and protect our free speech. So they didn't like that very much, and so we said, we're going to do this in protest of the university. So we showed up with our display very peacefully, and they had called the Ottawa City Police to have us arrested, and they handcuffed us and put us in paddy wagons, and then took us to a security building on campus, and then uncuffed us, charged us with trespassing on our own campus, and then told us to go to class.
Oh my goodness.
And so we subsequently filed a lawsuit against the school for their discrimination, but unfortunately we lost because laws, courtrooms are not immune to politics, I would say.
Speaking of politics, how do you feel when leaders say the abortion debate is no longer open? Even the Conservative Party of Canada, the last election, say we're not going to reopen this debate.
Yeah. I think it's incredibly disappointing to see how far removed our politicians are from real life. In our country, a majority of Canadians want to see a restriction on abortion in late term, in the third trimester, and that was recent polling that was released through Angus. And I think you are buying into a narrative that makes them afraid to have a conversation about abortion. But our philosophy is, as is many other organizations in the movement, people are having abortions, and they're having them to the tune of $100,000 a year. So you're talking about a very serious medical procedure that we've politicized to the point where we can't even talk about it. And that's a problem. That's a health risk to women and children, obviously. There are women who are being trafficked who have abortions. There are women who are in abusive relationships who are being pressured. And we can't effectively help any of them because there's this sort of blanket over the whole thing. So long story short, they're wrong, and the more that they try to say the abortion debate is closed, the more that we'll talk about it.
Ruth, what about the, let's say husband and wife, let's say the wife was raped, and the husband and wife say, we don't want to have this rapist's child growing inside of my wife. That's why we're having an abortion. What do you say to a couple like that? And they both agree that they don't want to have this child, they don't want to bring this child to term.
So first and foremost, it's critical that anyone who is aiding someone in this situation is able to speak compassionately to the people who are involved, because there are 3 people involved in this situation: the baby, the mom, and the dad. And in fact, they are now parents, whether they planned to be or not. And even if there was someone else involved, this person's wife, right, she was involved. She's now a mom. And as much as that child is partially the result of a rapist, a very horrible person who's done a horrible thing, they're also partially this woman's got her DNA, and that should make them valuable to whoever is involved in the situation, even if they came from a difficult circumstance.
So it's not the baby's fault, right?
It's not the baby's fault.
So maybe just give the baby up for adoption.
Mhm.
Maybe bring the baby to term.
Ultimately, abortion is not an eraser, and abortion cannot unrape a rape victim. And so what we say to women is that you're looking at perhaps adding trauma in an already very traumatic situation. There have been many women who've had abortions who say it felt like being raped again because the procedure is very intrusive. And not to say that it won't be extremely difficult, but if we had a woman who had been raped and she decided to keep her child, and then a year later this child starts to look like the rapist, we would not set up a clinic to allow her to go and end the life of that child because that child has the DNA of this rapist as well and looks like this rapist.
What do you say to women, though, Ruth, that say, this is my body, you have no right to tell me what to do with my own body?
Yeah, so what we often say is we ask a lot of questions. So we would predominantly ask first, is there one body or 2 bodies? When you're pregnant, how many bodies are there? And if you're pregnant, do you have 4 arms and 4 legs? Obviously not. You're not, a hermaphrodite. You're carrying someone else's body. And in our species, this is how people procreate. So it's not just your body. And so from a human rights perspective, you need to weigh the rights of both individuals, just like you would in any other situation between 2 born people. My rights end as soon as I'm going to harm you, and both are considered equal. So similarly, we need to look at the child's rights and the rights of the mom as equal. And in that way, abortion is nothing more than age discrimination, because they're younger, more vulnerable human beings, and for that reason, their rights are discounted.
How did we reach this point, Ruth, that Canada became a country with no restrictions on abortion? I mean, even liberal nations like France and Sweden have gestational restrictions.
Yeah, it's a good question. So again, from my perspective, it's a historical narrative that's been passed down now generation to generation, and the result of abortion is very hidden from the public. You could go, if you're not in some specific field, you could go years without knowing where the abortion clinic is in your city, or that abortions are even happening, or what is abortion at all. People have this very vague concept about what abortion is. And so for that reason, it's easy to build marketing and a narrative around something that people don't really understand. So in our work, we try extremely hard to bring the reality and the truth of abortion to young people and really get them to challenge their own preconceived notions when it comes to abortion, because most of it is just absolutely crazy. Like, we have ultrasound machines and a very clear picture and way to determine when human life begins based on science, logic, and imagery, and yet somehow this narrative has remained intact.
Has that ultrasound maybe changed women's perceptions or opinions about getting an abortion once they actually see their child inside of their bodies?
Especially in the States, where there are fewer regulations in being able to have ultrasound technology in crisis pregnancy care centers or outside abortion clinics. Like, I know an organization that has set one up in a bus, and then as women are heading to the clinic, they ask them, like, hey, why don't you just get checked first? And then they're able to convince them to have an ultrasound, and it's had an incredible ability to change women's minds. And I know so many stories like that, where once they actually are able to see either what an abortion is or the ultrasound image of their own child and their own offspring, their minds change.
What's interesting too, Ruth, is that recent studies have shown that Canadians, though the majority of Canadians are pro-choice, they're actually against gender-selective abortions.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's a bit of a difficulty if you are pro-choice, which is, you know, based on the narrative of women's rights, and yet you promote and support the killing of young women in the womb. You can't have it both ways. Although on university campuses, we have met pro-choice people who justify gender selection under women's rights and choices, and to which we often ask, so women should have the right to kill other women if it's for their own empowerment. You can't have it both ways. So I think pro-choice people who are more reasonable do see that there's a problem with using abortion to kill women. And we're, you know, in China and India, this is certainly proven to be a problem. It's nothing more than dehumanization. And, you know, similarly, there are a lot of pro-choice people who I think would oppose late-term abortion, at least from our experience on campus, and certainly the polling suggests that most reasonable people can see, okay, like if she's in crisis at first, you know, or, you know, having those conversations, but once the baby's viable, all those arguments fall apart. Not that they were very good to begin with, but they become far less understandable.
Sometimes people as well, Ruth, they want to have an abortion when they find out that their child maybe has Down syndrome. You know, there's some real physical challenges with this child. What do you say to that couple?
Well, again, you know, what we've typically said is, would you have the same mentality with a born child who has disabilities? Now, problematically in our country, some people probably would say, you know, end their life as well. So what we try to do is explain value, and we explain that, you know, there are varying, you know, just variables or characteristics that change through the course of your life. And we need to eliminate suffering and not sufferers. And frankly, people with Down syndrome are some of the happiest people that I have ever met, and they bring so much joy and color to our world. And if the left truly wants to be diverse and, you know, identity politics and really value people based on who they really are, then certainly this hypocrisy around abortion when it comes to disabilities is just absolutely ridiculous and needs to change.
I know a couple in Edmonton, they had to wait 3 years to adopt because there was a shortage of babies.
Wow.
So doesn't that make sense then to have the babies, to bring them to term, eliminate abortion, and then bless these families that want to have children and adopt kids?
Yeah, it's a very
have the opportunity, right?
Yeah, very interesting that many people who support abortion are also against adoption, and they say, well, you're going to have a child out there. How traumatic is that? Well, I mean, abortion is extremely traumatic to go through, yet we don't talk about it as a trauma, which adds another trauma to that situation. But yes, you know, I myself was adopted as a baby from India, and I think that, you know, people would be blessed to adopt, and certainly there are more couples waiting to adopt children than there are children in Canada.
Ruth Shaw, Executive Director of National Campus Life Network out of Ottawa. Thanks for joining us here in studio today.
Thank you so much for having me.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.